Hello everyone, welcome to today's session where we will walk through the process of deploying an AWS MCP server step by step. If you are working with AI projects and cloud infrastructure, understanding how to set up an MCP server is essential for managing workload effectively. So let's start with understanding our small design which talk about topology of our AWS project where we are going to use the AWS MCP server. This is our first MCP server. Before going to explain the design, I will talk about the MCP server who don't know what is the MCP server. So Model Context Protocol Server, an MCP server is lightweight program that act as a bridge enabling AI models to securely interact with external tools, data, and remote servers or services. It's standardized and how AI application connect to various resources, providing and the consistent way for them to access and utilize the different tools and data sources without needed custom integration for each service or each endpoint, right? So it not required any coding part, so it will be all you can use the single centralized configuration which is set up under the MCP server. So let's go and now discuss about the design we put together to deliver this our second project on AWS and AI components. Okay, so let's discuss about the topology or design what we put together for this project. Okay, so this is our first MCP server for AWS we are going to deploy in our environment. Okay, so we are going to use the Amazon Bedrock service to enable the foundational model. So we are going to use the Anthropic cloud model, which is 3.7 or 4.0, either of it we are going to use. We are going to use the IAM service and we are going to create a custom user which will be connect with our MCP server configuration and help to access the Bedrock models, foundation models, right? So then we will going to install the core component of the MCP server, which is the AWS MCP Core model and the AWS Cost Explorer model on the as part of tools installation for the MCP server configuration. Okay, so then the next section we are going to set up the MCP clients. So to access the MCP server, we need to install the MCP client. There are multiple MCP clients available in the market. So we are going to, as we are going to use the Visual Studio Code for this overall setup. So you can use the any server operating system or any server, virtual server, or physical server to install the MCP server for AWS. Okay, but for in today's project, we are going to use my local system and where I am going to use the Visual Studio Code to install the MCP server or set up the MCP server, and this for same I'm going to use the clean is the MCP client, or I can use the Amazon queue. So there are multiple MCP clients available, or you can develop your own custom client. So in today's project, we are trying to get a help of MCP server and try to understand the cost explorer and going to review the current cost, or like cost analysis for the AWS. So for that, we are using the AWS Cost Explorer MCP server component or as a tool, which will be help us to explore my current AWS cost or account cost or the services cost or monthly cost we can analyze. So that's where this overall project all about for today's MCP server installation process. So let's see what are the prerequisites required and what component we require to onboard for this. So now let's start with the prerequisites, what we need to start to install the MCP server on the Visual Studio Code. So first off, you require the Python 3.12 version, or you can have the 3.10 also, but most recent version if you use that will be better. So so I have the 3.12 version, then you need a UV version, and then just make sure you have the npm install Nginx server. Okay, and most importantly, you should creating the AWS config profile to connect Visual Studio Code to your Bedrock AWS service. So we are using authentication and authorization perspective. We are using the AWS user access key and secure key. So make sure you have set up that profile. So you need to set up the profile. If you are using the custom profile name, use the custom. So I set up the default profile. So it is by default, take the name as a default. Let verify the you have available that config AWS configure list profiles. So I already set up the profile with one of the user we created, which I showed you initially in AWS console, which is the default profile, and Bedrock is the user. Okay, as now we are validated the prerequisites which is required to install on your local system. Now the time to install or download the libraries for the MCP server from the AWS side. So I am using the AWS Git repo from where I am downloading the MCP server, AWS MCP server libraries, Python libraries. So it's simple, AWS labs.github.io/MCP is the GitHub repo where they are published all the AWS MCP server related repos or libraries. They have a lot of instruction documentation. You can go through that. There are many MCP server. They are released many of the core MCP server which required to install always any other MCP server you're going to use. So we are going to use the two MCP servers today, which is by default we have to have used core MCP server. And the second, the cost analysis server. AWS releases a lot of MCP servers, right? So the cost analysis is one of that. So cost analysis mostly used to analysis your cost from the AWS services, cost utilization, the cost analysis explorer, or service costing or service reporting, right? Service cost reporting. It will generate the cost report and we can do the analysis, or ready-made analysis also there available. So you can monitor the cost, you can check the what cost you are currently getting charged or getting billed. So that we are going to see today in this project. So MCP cost analysis server and MCP core server we're going to utilize. Let's go in the GitHub repo here, just one click ahead, and once you go in the GitHub repo, so you can see here all list of MCP servers, AWS MCP server, the core MCP server which we are going to install, and we can see the instruction how we can download the libraries of core MCP server. So PyPy install I'm going to use for installation or deploy the libraries. So this is the command you can utilize. You might be seen already qualify this on my system because we already installed in past before recording this session. So but still I'm going to show you how you can install or download those libraries. So you can copy that command from the MCP server command from here. Just click on copy and paste it here on your console and enter. This is the core Python libraries, MCP server library is going to be download on your local system and install it. Okay, it might be show already qualified. Okay, so it is showed already qualified, already installed on the location, which is the location is program data. Anaconda, I'm using the Anaconda environment profiling. So it is Anaconda libraries and state package it is installed, all the MCP core server Python libraries. Okay, so next library we're going to install, which we was talking about, the cost. Okay, cost analysis library. So let's scroll down here and the cost analysis MCP server, and if you click on PyPy, it will give the same command. You can copy this command and go to your Visual Studio Core terminal, paste it and install the libraries. This is also we already installed, so it might be give the you already satisfied. So to install this, before you installing, make sure all these prerequisites has to be qualified, so which I showed here, right? You should have the Python version which is higher than 10.0, like 3.10.0, and you should have UVX installed, which is 7.8. If you see the prerequisites here, it will be clearly state. If you go in the core, it's already mentioned here. Okay, so you should have UVX core installed. Okay, so we already installed that prerequisite, and we installed the libraries, Python libraries, both for the core and the console. Okay, so now we completed downloading the MCP server libraries from the AWS site. So now time to install the MCP client. To install the MCP client, I will use the Visual Studio Code extensions. If you click on the extension, you can see the clean is the MCP client. We are going to use it on IDE. So click on install. Once installation completed, you will be able to see in left hand panel clean client. Click on that. So once you click here, so you can able to see the MCP client, clean client console. So first, we are going to use to configure this client to make sure integrate with our AWS Bedrock service. To integrate with the AWS Bedrock service, we need AWS IAM user, which we already created and configured as a profile here. So click on the setting button, and you are able to see the all the options which needs to be configured. So API provider, which will be our provider, service provider, where we are going to use our foundation model. I'm using the Amazon Bedrock. You can use whatever your provider is, but as we are going demo on the AWS, so we are selecting the Amazon Bedrock service, where we enable already our foundational model. Okay, then I'm going to use the AWS profile. There is no good idea to technically or security perspective to use the AWS credential configure directly here. I have created the AWS profile which I showed you previously, which will be contain all the AWS user credentials. Okay, so if you are using the default profile, no need to mention here. If you see here, default is if default empty. Okay, so if you are keep this empty, it will be considered as a default profile. It needs to be picked up. So I am using the AWS region US East 1. So I selected my region. You can select your own region wherever you are enable the foundational model. So most importantly, we need to enable this click. So use cross region inference. So as AWS and Anthropic foundational models about 2.0 is not support the direct ARN endpoints. So we have to have used the cross region inferences endpoint or cross region inference ID. Okay, so use custom VPC endpoint. You can create your own custom VPC endpoint in AWS for the Bedrock service and custom models, and you can give the endpoint here, VPC endpoint, to use the enable VPC endpoint. So use prompt caching. I'm not going to use the caching, it's cost more. Okay, so I'm leaving blank. So but most importantly, if you're using the Bedrock and Anthropic model, okay, which is Cloud 3.7 we are using, so you have to have enable the use cross region inferences. Okay, so then time to model selection. As I told you, we are going to use the Anthropic Cloud 3.7 model, which is Sonnat model. Okay, I selected my model, and very good option here where it will show you what are the token cost involved, how many tokens you can maximum output you can get it, the input price, how much price is there. Okay, so each and every component it will be explained very well here in this client. Okay, once this configuration done, so we can move on to set up the server. So now you install the libraries. Okay, so now you need to enable those servers, the core servers. So there is a two-way you can do this. Okay, if you go in the server configuration in bottom, there is a manage MCP server. If you click here, okay, so MCP server, so no MCP server currently installed. So we don't have any MCP server currently installed for this client. We only downloaded the libraries and installed those libraries on our local server. but main part here starts where we actually going to configure and install the MCP server. So once you click here, again I'll show you the MCP manage MCP server for this MCP client. Okay, once I click here, click on the setting button, so it will take you to the option where you can configure the MCP server. So there are two options I can see here: the marketplace, remote server, and install. Okay, so I can utilize the install server, which we did this. So we are installed using the Python pipe core server and billing server, which install on this particular location. I can use this path and give the path here in the JSON configuration file and utilize those MCP servers. So install means you already installed the server, but now we are going to utilize or integrate with this MCP client. So for MCP client, it is no MCP server installed. So you have to redirect this configuration to pick up our install MCP server, which we already installed using the Python libraries. Okay, this is the first option. Second option, remote server. If you are using your own custom server OS where you install the MCP server, you can give that MCP server name and MCP server URL and add the server and edit the configuration. You can set up the configuration. We are not going to see this today. Okay, we most probably we are going to see in the couple of upcoming videos. Okay, and third option is marketplace installation. There is very good installation. If you don't want to go in the configuration hassle, you don't want to configure anything for a redirect instruction or install instruction, you can simply go in marketplace and type AWS core server. Okay, if you can see here, you can directly go and install, click on install core server. It will be help you to install all your AWS core server, MCP core server related component. It will configure automatically, and it will be available to interact with through this MCP client. Okay, but it will be charged. Just want to note it here. It will be charged in cents. It's not much, but today we are not going to see this. We are going to see to install the server from install libraries. Okay, if you can see here, we already installed the libraries. So now there is a instruction given by the AWS how we can configure the MCP client or endpoint using the any MCP client. Okay, so if I go back in the code, so here you can see if I go in the core MCP server, so in library. Okay, so here they are given instruction how we can use the MCP client and redirect. So if you can see here, you can use the Amazon Q developer CLI to set up or redirect to MCP client. I'm going to use this JSON config and make sure that I'm going to set up the MCP client to access our MCP server, install MCP server. Okay, so let's go and do that. I have already drafted the configuration, so where I'm going to configure that. So once I click on the configure MCP server, this JSON file is open. So currently you can see MCP server JSON file, the clean MCP underscore setting.json file, where I need to mention the MCP server configuration details. So where I configure the MCP server, so if you see here, MCP program data and packages. So I have created already configuration file for that. Okay, so if you go and click configuration, so first we are going to install the core configuration. Okay, so which is this MCP server. Okay, so from where I'm going to write this from our GitHub repo, and the command will be execute the MCP client. So if you can see this Anaconda program file and where we installed already. Okay, so click on here and paste this configuration JSON code. So what it is talking about, let me okay, so this is the GitHub repo path from where the MCP server get checked out, or MCP server code get checked out. Okay, and then it will be command execute the exe file where we are already installed the MCP server, and it will set up the environment. Okay, and it will be auto appear disable false. Okay, so environment we already set up. Okay, so if you go here now and click on done, Okay, so if you see here, it will be start popping up the MCP server installation updated. Okay, so if you go now here, MCP server configuration manage MCP server. Okay, so we have to save this file first. Once you save this file, if you see here, update MCP server, MCP server updated. Okay, updating MCP server updated. Okay, so once this completed, you can go back again on the manage MCP server. You're able to see that core MCP server must be installed. If you click here, okay, now you can see the core MCP server is already installed now. Okay, using this configuration. Okay, so now the second part of this configuration will be going to install or like configure the AWS cost analysis MCP server. So currently we already installed the core MCP server, AWS core MCP server. Now the time to install or configure AWS cost analysis MCP server. Okay, so let's start the configuration. So you can use the same JSON block to configure that. Okay, only we need to change the path where we install the other MCP server. Okay, now I need to use the same block, but only thing I need to change the path. It should be the cost analysis server, cost analysis MCP server. Okay, and the exe should be also not core, it will be the cost analysis MCP server.exe. Okay, and the most important part what we need to add here, which will be the AWS underscore profile value. So profile will be default. Okay, so I am using default profile to connect the Bedrock in backend. So just save this configuration. Once you save this configuration, it will be start updating or installing the MCP. If you see here, updating MCP server, updating the MCP server configurations. Once this prompt done, if you go back in MCP manage MCP servers, see now cost analysis, AWS cost analysis servers is now available. Okay, so now we done with the MCP client configuration, which will be redirect to path where we already installed the MCP server on our local system. Okay, so what are the things we saw to install the MCP server? So we are configure the client, which will be communication talk to a backend Bedrock service in AWS and foundational model and the region, and then we install the MCP server or configure the MCP server in MCP client, where it will be trying to execute the MCP server or start the MCP server from a location where we installed previously from the Python install library. Okay, so now let's jump into to test this server. Okay, so if you see couple of buttons here, the approve buttons, approve button is auto approve enable. So I don't want to auto approve enable. So whenever I give the prompt, it should tell me what this client is going to do or take action to give my prompt query answer. So I need to approve that. Sometime if you want to check what are the things it's going to be doing the backend, it will be show you. Okay, so now first thing I'm going to do, ask the simple query to the MCP client, as we are doing this project to get our cost analysis from the AWS cost explorer. So we are going to ask the prompt or create the prompt or create the query to the backend AWS services or backend AWS data through the MCP server. So if you see all this configuration, we not involved to write any Python code or any integration configuration codes. Only we configure the MCP client, where it will be go back and to communicate with our AWS Bedrock service to get the foundation model or LLM model to answer our prompt questions. Okay, So let's write our first prompt. So what is last 3 month cost in, okay, just ask this prompt and let's see what answer we'll get. This is good. How many token it is getting utilized, it show here the progress, and what are the things it is going to do, it will show. I'll not select auto approve, so we can approve whatever he asking to execute the task. Make sure you are going through each and everything. So what he is going to do, I see that you have 2 MCP server configured. One is core MCP and cost analysis MCP server. So he's asking the permission to use our core server MCP server. I give the permission, approve. So it will be go and list down all the steps what he is going to perform. Okay, so he's going to get the better understanding how the AWS Cost Explorer work and how it's going to be provide the services. So it is asking the back questions. Client has a question, so client also asking the question to us to more input and understand more requests what we are doing to ask this prompt. Are you looking for the total AWS cost across the all services? Yes, I am looking for the total AWS cost across all services. Yeah. So I give the answer to him. So it is now going to understand the requirement. So it is going to check the AWS client version, if it is installed or not. It might be go and create a CLI command to get the data. Yeah, that's what I understood. So it will be click install. Now it gave me the answer. So it give me the total cost from March to April, and proceed while running. So let's see if it give me the in good format. So basically it gave me the output in JSON format, if you see right here. So it's unbilled cost for the March to April time period, it's given 23 USD, and it's May month cost, it's given $42. We can going to check this again. It has a question, client has a question. I can see the command is running and has started to showing the cost data. Yes, I can see. So so you can see the complete cost. Yeah, I can see the complete cost. I can give him the back answer like yes. So if you can see here, it is showing the all the last 3 months cost correctly. So if you want to, I'll go take you to the cost explorer. So now it is giving me the nice output format here. So it is showing me the cost analysis. API request says now I have the complete cost data the last 3 months. Okay, what it did first, it will be execute the CLI command and check if it is CLI has been installed. It is execute the CLI command to get last 3 months data. It had given me the JSON raw output or draft output. I just verified if I answered the client. Okay, yes, I am getting the data now. So it is now converted this all the data in the nice format. So now I have the complete cost data. Okay, so March it is the $23, $23.27, and April it is $20.12. It's May $42. Let's see how its authenticity, right? So if I go in the AWS console, okay, I'll just minimize this and we'll verify with our actual cost. If I go in the cost and billing, okay, so let's see the cost. Okay, So see, I can see the bill cost. It almost given the same is 42.30. It's round up like 42.26 for the month of May. If I go and check last 3 months, let me view the bills. Okay, so billing summary, I can say 1st May till 31st May. Okay, it's $42. Okay, so if I can change the month and check whether I can get the similar last April is same. If I click on April, if you can check, it's a $20.13. So yeah, it's a $20.13. It's exactly same price cost. If I go here in April, so April it is 20.12. Sorry, I want to check the March. Okay, if I go in the March is 23.27. If you see here 23.27. So this is how it's given the in the approximate data, and now it's give me the overall month period in table format. I'm not able to see the table correctly. I can expand it and you can check correctly. Okay, yeah. So this is how MCP server works. So it can be query on backend on behalf of you and get all the data. You need not to write any API configuration to fetch the talk to the foundational model backend and get the answers. It will give the AWS launch a lot of MCP server, and it give me the how much API cost I got charged for this activity. It is already given here $66.6. Okay, so yep. So this is, you can start new tasks also and start getting your answers. So MCP, AWS MCP released a lot of many other models. Like we can going to do the practicals or projects on those models in future also. So let's see what all models are available now. These are the model list. So most important models or most popular models are MCP server models are the serverless, the EKS, and DocumentDB, and then we can say a front-end MCP servers. There are a lot of MCP server released by Amazon. So you can use these MCP servers, set up for your projects or set up for your cloud activity where you don't want to spend a time on the integration part or code API development part. You can use the MCP server. Okay, thanks for watching this video, and keep learning. Happy learning.